Hello, my dear ones. I hope you are well. I'm back again, and I'm happy to tell you that this is the 101st video on this channel on YouTube, Irini Hara. And yeah, it's a kind of small milestone. I already uploaded 100 videos plus one. And I've been thinking what topic to approach, as there have been some interactions and debates about many different things on different situations or platforms. And I think I want to speak about the connection to the self from a trauma informed perspective, but also why it's important that we understand what is called attachment, or what being attached to something means, because there are many different interpretations and approaches around attachment theory, attachment to the self, attachment to the ego, and things like that. And in more spiritual perspectives, I sometimes see something that yeah, it might be taken from a more psychological approach, but in reality, it goes in a direction that can be misleading and can also create illusions for people about their own self and why it's important actually to be connected. And I'm not saying that you need to be attached, but it's good to understand the difference between connection and attachment. And it's also a good moment to speak about these kind of things because we are at the end of this week. We are the first week of September. So we are already entering autumn season, and it's still quite warm for Norway, but slowly the weather changes. And I notice changes also in my mood, and it might be because it's been raining for a while and not so much sun. But this weekend we have two potent aspects related to the moon that are very interesting, especially for those who want to do some the so-called shadow work or inner work around something that is hidden and needs to get on the surface and be seen and recognized. I personally am going to do this because I'm going to worship a constellation with my teacher Pia, with my son, and we will be a little bit out of this world in a bubble with other people working a lot very deeply in the field. So we have a full moon in Virgo. We are the season of Virgo right now. It's the season of discipline, of organization, of harvesting, and then making some provisions for winter and so on. But we also have an eclipse that will be visible in many parts of the world, including Europe and in Norway. And they say it will be a very beautiful one, very clear in the sky. So I invite you to look to the moon and see what kind of connection you can create with the beautiful, full, round-shaped moon. So returning to this topic, I want to speak about the self. There are many different theories about self, soul, connection, disconnection, attachment. The attachment theory has very much to do with the first stage of development in after birth, when we still are attached to our mother, and it creates a symbiosis with her, a very close, entangled connection, because we fully depend on her as small babies. And from a trauma perspective, if this attachment is not created, or there is no ground for developing a healthy attachment, then the babies will suffer of a heavy wound or trauma of identity and love, because they will not receive what they are supposed to receive as small beings that need care, need attention, need love, need food, and all their needs met by the mother, who is the first figure to be there in most of the cases. And there are many different situations when this doesn't happen. And so, when the foundation of our life as human beings starts with a faulty material or with a faulty condition, because the child doesn't get this from the beginning, it is obvious that slowly, progressively, during its development in life, uh, will uh, will search outside for someone to meet these needs, or for someone to love, to give its love, hoping that will receive back something. And then we create identifications. Sometimes they can be positive because they bring something, they add value to our life, to our behavior and thoughts. But many times they are negative, and they can hinder our capacity to develop as an independent human being, autonomous, self-reliant, that also knows how to create connections with other people and relationships and so on. And slowly this can go towards disease, or sometimes the wound of abandonment, it is so deep that the person is drawn towards that, because doesn't and realizes it will never have what was supposed to have at that time. The sadness, the grief is so deep that it's impossible for that person to recover from this feeling that life is not worthy to be lived. And then develops the extreme trauma survivor strategy, that is suicidal thoughts, or even ultimately taking its own life. So, of course, this is the worst case scenarios, but I'm just trying to tell you how this can slowly develop from not met needs in the starting point of life into something that later becomes a burden and actually a motivation to not continue this life. And it happens always that all those heavy emotions, and many of them, they stay unprocessed and unreleased if people are not enough connected with what is happening inside them, or they just prefer to stay disconnected, and then they develop survival strategies to stay disconnected. And that means they can go into addiction, that can go in compulsive behaviors, they can attach at all costs with all sorts of patterns of behavior and thought to other people and situations and so on. So all this progressively leads to uh, somehow an annihilation of the self, because people lose their connection to who they truly are. And most of the times they don't even realize who they are, because everything is so suppressed and hidden inside that they have no clues or what to do or how to do. And then they would rather adopt some models and some masks for several situations when they consider that these masks and model can function, so they can um, live their life, but it's almost like an automated mode of living. And as we already know, trauma split is a disconnection from our trueness, essence, from our true self. And in spiritual communities and terminology, there is a lot of distinction between self and soul. And I created, based on my readings and experience in working with other people and working on myself and understanding also my own trauma biography, a very simple distinction and notion of the self. The self is actually that core essence that we carry inside, and that many times we live somehow disconnected because of all these traumas that happen during our development. And for some, that may be very severe traumas, but for others, there might be really many small traumas, but they impact us in many different levels, even more than we can understand sometimes. That is why I always advise trauma work, working on our childhood wounds and traumas, because then you become aware what actually happened, what is the cause of your discomfort or disease or symptom and so on, or difficulty, and then you can do something about it. because everything becomes visible. You start to connect with all those fragments that are still in split, and you start to attend to those needs that have not been met when it was supposed to. So the self, it is an inner core reality. And when we disconnect from the self, we tend to create models of how I want to be, or what I think that will make me happy, what will bring me happiness and fulfillment in life. And many people attach themselves, is what I actually noticed. And also for myself, it was like that. We tend, when we disconnect, because this primal attachment that was needed was not there, or was not possible, or was limited, we tend to attach to other realities, to other people, to other models, and to create survival stories, survival strategies, as I said. But that means that we move our focus from inside to something that is outside. And most of the times, this outside might seem that is very anchored into the reality, and that is something very stable, that we can take a grip on it, and we hang on it, right? And we go on with it. And in many cases, it can be something very material, like having a good job, really well paid, or a good husband or wife and family. And then if something happens and this reality dissolves or disappears, it can happen. It can be through accidents, through cataclysms, through divorce, to death, and so on. We start to reactivate the initial primal wound when we felt that we didn't have access to something that we needed, to that care, to that love, to that attention, to that stability, right? And it can be very dramatic for many people to go through this, let's call them dismantling of illusion, realities, or situations. Because those situations, even if they are on the moment destabilizing us, and that we feel like we lose something important, and we don't know what to do next, or where to go, those situations are having an immense potential of inner growth. And is in those extreme situations that we can actually find a way to reconnect and to understand what was missing at the beginning and what is reactivated in that moment. So we can overcome and finally release that energy that has been stuck and hidden inside our psyche and in the body. And the self-reality is not a spiritual, immaterial notion. It's very much embodied, because we cannot acknowledge the presence of the self, of our senses, without being a human being with a body. Because if we tend to go into projections in the ethereal world and in dream state and in creating of sorts of mythological stories and character to support these illusions about ourselves, then that is a mechanism that disconnects from the body too. And coming back to the distinction between self and soul, I just want to say that, in my opinion, the soul is a part of the self. It's not something separated. And I often hear people, especially in the spiritual community, making also this distinction between primary self, myself, and the higher self. And they always say higher self like something that stays somehow above. I've actually heard people saying, yes, you have this higher self that is taller than your body, let's say, at least, I don't know, half a meter or something like that. And curiously enough, there is a very big trend, a lot of people that would rather speak of the higher self than of the simple, basic self, because the higher self knows better, because the higher self receives illumination from the outer world or the cosmos or whatsoever, other reality, because the higher self is that oversees our life. And I will contradict this view and the hypothesis that we have or need a higher self, because that is already fragmentation That is already a dissociation proof that we want to go somewhere higher instead of keeping our feet on the ground and truly connected with ourselves, with the only self that we have. And as I said, for me, the soul is a part of this self, is a part of our inner reality, and represents, yes, of course, we can think that it's something immortal that survives our earthly body when we die and go in transition to a different state. We can imagine this. Why not? It's very poetical and beautiful. But for me, the soul, as long as we are alive in this life, it is the creative, permanently evolving part of the self because we cannot separate them. If the self has a true notion of who it is or what it is, and it is embodied, is present in the body in the present moment, and doesn't escape all the time in stories and strategies to go somewhere else, then the soul has a high chance to manifest as something that allows us to evolve in this timeline that is life. And we can evolve in many different ways, as I already said. We can evolve in building a health state through sports and movement and all sorts of strategies. And at the same time, we can evolve at the mental level, reading and developing capacities that are useful of support to our own functioning as human beings. But the real evolution for me of the soul, based on a grounded, embodied self as a human being, is when we acknowledge that we can become the writer of our own story, and that we don't need to create scenarios, because the scenarios come by themselves while we are writing that story. We become the storyteller instead of letting other people or situation to govern our life, or especially in the case of people who, as I said, got traumatized from early stages of their life. We let those hidden mechanisms and coping strategies to govern our life. And it's not a coincidence that I placed in my background this image of a beautiful full moon and of this lady in red. I like the lady in red, I'm a Magdalena, going on this thin thread like a ballerine with a closed umbrella behind her. And she seems very elegant. She has all this ballerine pose of the body. Very comfortable to be in this position that feels a little bit threatening and dangerous, right? Dancing on a thread like that in the universe and going in direction of the moon. And this is my invitation, especially for this weekend when you have this configuration in the astral realm with the moon. Connect with that hidden part of you and ask yourself what prevents you to take life like this lady, to have this elegant pose while you are balancing on a thin thread in front of you, following your destiny, the red line of your destiny, without actually knowing where you go, being present, embodied, and at the same time not worried that you might fall down. Because this is a kind of hard endeavor to work on this tiny thread, balancing from a place to another and not worrying of if I'm falling down, what will happen, and my life will end, or I just can change perspective on my life. That is my invitation to you. Trauma work will always be important. If you start to do it, you will understand. It doesn't have to be all the time heavy. It always pays off if it's done well. And you need to enjoy the ride after all. So Don't go always in those hidden places and difficult ones. But when you go, take it and do it seriously. Take it like a life journey with some moments that sometimes are heavier, and then better moments, happier moments, lighter moments come. It's always like that. But keep always the focus inside on the connection with the self and in front of you. So every step you take has a meaning and has a direction. You just not need to be wondering and confused all the time, because the red line anyway takes you where you need to go. And learn to be flexible and balanced from right to left and left to right, because this is also life, with a smile on your face and who knows, a little bit of curiosity. I hope you enjoyed my intervention today. It's 101 episode, a bridge between me and you. And if you feel comfortable to open this discussion and the process into trauma healing, I'm here for you. I can tend your hand, I can give you an opinion and an advice, or I can support you and guide into a deeper process inside yourself. Take care and enjoy the weekend. Bye.